you check the children.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And Jaime Fuego here.
And we are here to discuss the brand new horror release called Until Dawn, which is, of course, based on the video game from the early 2010s, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know
I think
offhand?
it was 2015 when I briefly took a glance at it. But if I remembered correctly, it was only a couple years into the horror show when you and Marsha were playing it, right?
2015, you're right. Yep. So yeah, it was a very well-made video game that was all about the choices you make as the main character. There are a couple of different baddies that you come up against, but the decisions you make throughout the game determine whether or not all or some or none of your compatriots die along the way. And so it's a very interesting thing, but this movie is done completely differently. So let me get that out of the way right out of the gate. Anyone that's played the game that is hoping for it or expecting for the movie to be like the game, just leave those expectations at the door, because you're not going to be pleased if you go in expecting or hoping for that. What you do get, conversely, and what I'm here to say is maybe a bit surprising, because this movie is already kind of getting ripped pretty heavily by some critics, or at least by some of our contemporaries, some other YouTubers I've seen put up their reactions and things like that. I haven't watched.
I was wondering,
reviews.
man.
I haven't watched any reviews. I've seen some headlines though, and people are generally not happy with a large portion of this film. And I gotta say, right out of the gate, my overall thoughts for Until Dawn, I had a good time. Being the gore hound that I am, I was supremely satisfied with this film, because there was a ton of gore. And it's not to say that there was nothing else, but it was so leaned into that I really appreciated it. It's not a wholly unique idea, and they even call that out early in the movie, because it's repeating death situations, which they originally kind of referenced without referencing it, Groundhog Day, and then another person's like, well, a lot of movies have done that now, and we know which ones they're talking about, Happy Death Days, things like that. And so they acknowledge it's a familiar trope, but it's what they do with that. And every night there's kind of a new thing hunting them down, and or every return trip there's a new thing hunting them down. And all this is in the trailers. We're going to keep this non-spoiler, spoiler free. But I had a good enough time with this. Are the characters the deepest? No. But I didn't particularly find myself caring in this one, because it was just meant to be a thrill ride. Like, it was never meant to have the deepest of characters. Although seeing it play out the way that it did, it gave me ideas on how to rewrite some characters in a slasher of mine to make them less surface level than these characters were.
Because they're a kiddie pool, man. Yeah,
they are. But to me, it was clear that that's not what the movie was caring about. And yes, every movie should try and balance all of those things, and I am certainly trying to balance all of those things with my films, but some movies just don't care, and sometimes, as a viewer, I don't care either, and I'm just along for the fun ride, and that's what I kind of gave myself over to for this, because they really went with it for the gore and the different scenarios. I thought it was, it was made by David F. Sandberg, and he's a very talented filmmaker. He what else did he do, Fuego, right off the top of your head?
So I mean, the thing that really got him on the map was Lights Out, which started the short and then was made into the feature, and then he did Annabelle Creation, which I thought was awesome. And then he shifted into the superhero gig. He did the 2 Shazam movies.
Yeah, but excuse me. Oof! Wow, something went down the wrong pipe there.
This is genre return, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say this. Yeah. So this is his return to horror, and it reminded me why he's talented, because I thought that the scare scenes were effective. Again, tropey, yes, but still effective in their presentation. So, long story short, much longer than my overall thoughts normally go, I enjoyed this film, and I guess maybe I felt the need to defend myself right out of the gate with my reasons why. But we'll dive more into it. So, Fuego, your overall thoughts?
Yeah, man, this was is an interesting kind of just up and down, peak and valley with me because, man, I came into this knowing pretty much nothing aside from the fact that it was a video game. I hadn't even watched a trailer for this. And so I was going in pretty much like empty, empty clean slate and all that jazz. And I was struggling through the first 15 or 20 minutes of this movie not to hate watch because I was like, oh my God, the jokes are awful. These characters are generic and stupid. And like, the water wall, yeah, that's what it's called, a water wall. And I'm just
that's what that song was based on.
Yeah, the song, yeah. And I'm just like, okay, I'm hating this movie. But then I stopped hating it, and it kind of turned it around on me, man. Most notably when the carnage started to come, and I was like, okay, maybe I kind of understand what they were going for with this. It's more of like a tour de force of maybe even kind of Cabin in the Woods a little bit in the fact that a nice greatest hits of different, monsters and scenarios and things of that nature. And I thought the set design was really rad for a few different spots.
The
and
production design, it was incredible.
It was great. Yeah, man. And so the movie won me over in the end. And I was really which is a lot to say when, I admit that I was not liking it at first. And there was a couple sequences, especially one that involves water, where I was just like, that's gangster, dude. I was liking it after a while. And it's nothing incredibly memorable or anything like that, but and none of these kids really did much of anything for me. You had your poor man's Jared Leto. You had, nobody else was really brought too much as far as like gravitas or anything. But as you said, that didn't really seem to be the intention here. It was really just the showcase of all kinds of interesting kills, and the whole Groundhog Day fact or Happy Death Day or whatever, and the fact that they're cannon fodder, but they're going to keep coming back, and we can just present even more dynamic and interesting sort of ways to view their demise. So I'm not going to give it like some big glowing, double thumbs up or anything, but I can echo your sentiments, man. I was more entertained than, especially in the end, the first 10 to 20 minutes had me feeling. So
it's interesting, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. We'll get into everything, of course, but that's cool. Like, I wasn't hating on it at the beginning. It was a pretty typical setup, and it was trying to have characters that were at least alternative to sort of the usual. Like, it wasn't 80s tropey characters, but it was a little bit more recent sort of tropey characters. But yeah, it was well. Okay, so let's dive deeper in the way that we do. We'll talk about the story, the acting, the effects, all of that good stuff in turn. And I want to try and start mentioning more regularly that if you guys want to watch clips of the film while we do our review, a lot of people overlay clips. We just don't like to deal with that copyright issue. So in every review now for the last few months, I've been putting the trailer for the film in the description box down below. So if you want, pull up the footage, pull up the trailer, watch it on repeat while we talk. That's all that anyone uses for footage anyway, is trailer footage.
Oh, yeah.
So
we have access to anyway.
You can not watch us at all and just watch the trailer on repeat if you want while we talk.
Or you can do a half window kind of thing.
Yeah. Have fun with it. Have fun with it.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so the film was just very simply about this group of young people so it's a group of friends that are searching for the sister of one of the group, and she has gone missing in a particular.
Clover.
Yeah, she's gone missing in a particular area. Clover is the main protagonist.
She's like our final girl, yeah.
Right. And so they're trying to retrace the sister's steps, find out what happened, and they quickly happen upon this weird hotel mansion kind of undescribed sort of building, but it's obviously a domicile of some kind. And so they go in, and the first night, they are attacked by a murderous slasher character, and then they quickly wake up again and realize that they are back at the start of the night, and they have to eventually figure out. Well, they're all just trying to survive. I won't say what they eventually figure out is the goal, but that's the goal, right out of the gate, at least, is for them to survive. Yeah. So I appreciated how the film played out. Again, they weren't focused on really the deepest, emotional dive into the characters, but it was just more of, like you said, a roller coaster thrill ride, which I ended up being fine with. And yeah, so the story as it played out, I was fine. I think it made a choice at the end that was a choice that I'm not going to obviously discuss, but I don't know if I was wholly satisfied with the choice. But nonetheless, I appreciated and enjoyed the story as it played out.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that it was right around that first interaction with, oh, though there's danger afoot. That's when the movie actually, I was like, okay, they are going to go for it, and they are going to, you know, bring some ruckus and bring some craziness and everything. But I don't really feel like some of my only gripes about the story were the fact that I thought the rules weren't really explained that well.
They broke their own rules a couple times too.
They did. Yeah. And even aside from that, like there are a couple instances also where they're kind of researching what happened through newspaper clipping. Like it felt very video gamey at times, you know, with like the old phone and the red typewriter and, you know, the newspaper clippings and all of the, like, you know, missing, you know, signs and everything. But when they dip their toe into the lore as like why these poems were like kind of subterranean, that doesn't really reveal anything really. Yeah, no, when you start to kind of figure out why this area that they find themselves trapped is actually in the state that it is, I wanted to know more about that. And I was legit wondering, do they explain this sort of stuff in the games? Or was that just completely made up for this movie?
It's a whole different location. So I'll tell you, there's something at the end that is shown that is essentially the beginning of the video game.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that stuff seemed intriguing, but they only kind of dance around it a little bit. Like there's the intention of the scenario, maybe who could be watching or how they are involved, and you know, with dancing around the issue and everything. That was stuff that I actually was intrigued to know a lot more about, and they don't really. I mean, it's all about the showcase of the carnage, man, you know, and that's about it. So
I want to know more about it as well, because we can skip over the acting for now. Because I think it's more natural to talk about the production design, because we both touched on it, and it ties into your point. So what we find out is that and this isn't spoilery, this is just one of their things, is that there was a whole town that that they're like, you know, now investigating a small part of, that kind of had a major disaster, and it sort of sunk into the earth, and that sort of plays a part into the production design going forward, you know, down the line of the movie. Again, that's not spoilery. That's background that the characters learn about the location. So, you know, but it's something I bring up and tell you because that production design of that town, you know, and elements of it that's been, you know, essentially reclaimed by the earth, they lean into that in the third act, and it's really fucking cool. So
I thought so too. Yeah. That was where the movie was really hooking me. I was like, all right, we're moving and grooving now. We're actually, you know, cooking with gasoline.
I want a full, like, now I want a whole prequel or more just about this fucking town. Like, I could watch a whole movie that just explores this even more. So, like, that's a success to me. You know, like, this is a very small story. This is sort of the Purge 1 to what the Purge could become, or what the Purge eventually became. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. I think that this could be, you know, the small intro into the Until Dawn world, or into this town's world. And I think it could get bigger and bigger and bigger, involving the town, telling that story. That was one of the things that was the most intriguing about me, for me, and clearly for you too. So I call that a success for the film.
I do too. Yeah, and I wasn't expecting to be coming around to the lore of this film when it seemed pretty devoid of it initially. So like it seemed uninspired, and then it kind of turned a corner on me, you know, and then the second half of the movie. So
so imagine, like, you know, those movies that have towns that have been flooded entirely, and they're like towns deep below the surface. It's kind of that, but in the earth, and you see, you know, sort of some passageways and tunnels, and like it's eerie to see windows into the earth and stuff like that. So
which a character mentions at one point, why are there windows underground?
But that all goes towards the production design, and this is all new for the film. So like I was like really impressed with a lot of that stuff. The design of the location, even when the characters first enter it's really fucking cool because it's raining cats and dogs, and they enter, and there's, you know, you brought it up, the water wall, like the rain just stops, and it like just surrounds this area, and it was like, I was like, man, they're really setting up, like, this is really fucking cool. Like, you know, we haven't seen exactly something like this. They're taking some things akin to what we've seen before and kind of making it their own after a fashion. But yeah, the production design is kind of the thing that's saying the most for me in this film. Yeah,
and including a couple of the, like, when a second home suddenly appears that they didn't notice before, and it's got like graffiti in the front, and that what's her name, Clover, goes in, and I mean, it ties in with some of the makeup work and things of that nature too, where she meets this old woman who's on this, like, you know, oxygen machine or whatever, but the entirety of that area, and then Max, her former boyfriend, is exploring another room that has all of these different, like, masks and, you know, different elements to it, and we have the obligatory clown for a second that it didn't really work too much for me. You know, it's a little doll that he finds. Maybe it's a homage to
Poltergeist for sure.
Poltergeist, yeah, exactly. But yeah, and even the caverns that you had mentioned, I mean, and everything was very practical and pristinely put together, and it just upped that gritty, eerie, sort of very lived in and degraded environment, you know, and the juxtaposition between the two different homes, the one they're initially in, and then, you know, when they start to move to some other spots.
Yeah. So cinematography wise, I think they did a great job with this too. I really enjoyed
quit making the good looking movies, man. I mean, consistently, all the way back to Lights Out.
Yeah, exactly. And he utilizes, again, sometimes people just put the camera and show you what happens in different angles. He was utilizing the cinematography to help tell the story. He was keeping things in the distance out of focus at times for certain shots. He was keeping things right in front of the camera out of focus at times for creepiness effect. Like, Sandberg knows how to use the camera to elevate the creeps. And man, he did a great job in this throughout. Like, the cinematography was used to help sell the scares. There was one fantastic scare that was just about framing and moving people into certain positions and certain timing, and it scared it was the biggest reaction from the whole crowd, and definitely the biggest scare that got me, that like actually made my heart like pump and shit. I was like, god damn. Like,
I was really wondering if I had been in a more filled theater, because of the fact that I saw it at 4.
Oh yeah.
Like 2 other people in there, man. You know, because that was just what time was going to allow for me with schedule and school and everything. And if there was that sort of infectious energy, especially when the deaths start getting ramped up about 20, 30 minutes in, you know, maybe I don't know, maybe it would have got me even into it a little earlier than it took to get me around. But, you know, also lighting was a significant thing, you know, whether they're out in the woods and everything, and some of the creep shots of like what is starting to follow us, the silhouettes of, you know, could this be who our lead character is searching for, or is it a different monster? And the fact that, and it just ups that kind of creep factor where you don't know exactly what's after you, because you know it is a revolving door of creatures and monsters and humanoid whatevers after a while, and so you didn't exactly know what the hell was going after you until it had its cool reveals and everything. So yeah, I mean, it's a phrase of alliteration I use all the time. From a stylistic standpoint, man, this was like, you could see the Sony money on the screen, man.
Yeah,
really good.
And so let's circle back to the acting now real quick. I didn't have a problem with the acting. Like, I feel like everyone played their role fine.
It
was fine. Like, everyone was fine. There was no one that really had a moment to really like come out swinging with an emotional beat, you know, to really lean into. It was pretty much just escape and you know, realizations and shit like that. So there wasn't a lot of depth that they could reach for.
Yeah, and they weren't, you know, that way though, as you said.
So I feel like they did great with what they had to work with, honestly.
Yeah, they try with one scene in particular late in the movie with the 2 sisters to, you know, add a little oomph there, and it just felt like an afterthought, like a too little, too late sort of thing. It's like yeah, you're kind of going against the more, you know, recycly, happy-go-lucky vibes that we're eventually getting to. And so when it did try to get a little earnest with like a sprinkling here or there, it just didn't really feel like it fit the vibe of just the almost cartoonish carnage that we got at times. So
yeah, no, I would agree with that. And to the point of cartoonish carnage, we don't say that in a derogatory
No, not
way.
at all. Dude,
I would say, yeah, I was literally just going to make that comparison.
Yeah.
It is very, very comparable to The Monkey in its surprise gore moments.
Yeah.
Surprise,
especially with the water, especially the water bit.
Is incredible.
That was maybe the standout of the movie for me, just because it was unexpected, and and then stuff did get brutal. You know, we haven't hit the practical
There was a moment, and I won't say exactly but there was a moment that's very reminiscent of a moment in Drop.
Oh,
have you seen Drop?
Oh, we reviewed it together.
Oh, right. Okay, I wasn't sure if it. Yeah, I do. Yeah. There's so many of you co-hosts now. No. But well, I'll tell you after. I don't want to ruin it. But there is one moment that is very akin to Drop, where something happens when someone's not looking, and so it was very similar to me. But it didn't bother me ultimately. So
well, but there's also one moment that I didn't want to forget to mention is that there is a bit late in the movie where they're trying to figure out how many times they've been there. It's not spoilery for me to mention.
Time jump.
Well, not even that. It's where Sandberg is almost like going back to his roots a little bit. So there's a little foray back into found footage for a sequence in the movie that it actually worked for me. I thought that was one of the few tenser moments where they were kind of through this phone, they find almost reliving stuff that there's so much that's happened, over the course of this time that they're even trying to, recall how long they've been there. And they're like, oh yeah, that happened, and that creature, and yet it really melded well. It didn't feel like it stuck out, in a sore thumb situation or whatever, like you can see at times where a film doesn't have any found footage, tendencies, and then all of a sudden they just throw it in there for a little bit. It actually was pretty seamless and felt natural to me. It worked in my estimation.
I was a little
jarred,
mixed. I was a little mixed on the time jump because he adheres so closely to showing everything that happens for the first few nights. Then to just kind of skip like he does, it was a little jarring to me, but I just ran with it. I just rolled with it, and I was fine ultimately. The thing I really want to talk about, the sound design was great. The score was a little, nothing really particularly stood out to me, but the thing I want to mention is the effects. I loved the effects. There was a ton of effects, so many good practical effects, some CG augmentation, but for the most part, a lot of it to me looked practical, and so I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it was blended well, man. Whether it's knives through the face of people, or cut in half, explosion-y stuff, whatever the hell it was, and then also just the makeup, the segment with the old woman that I mentioned, where there's a rampant decomposition thing that goes down. It looked pretty damn good. I'm sure you've seen clown masky stuff before. You've seen similar designs to some of these creatures, but then the reason that I mentioned Cabin in the Woods is that was also a smorgasbord of different things that we had seen with a different riff on it and stuff. And so yeah, man, I just think from a visual standpoint, whether it was all of it was lacking in the script department at times, sure, and we didn't really give these characters a lot to deal with, but pretty much everything else in this movie, man, I was relatively impressed with. And I also went in with fairly low expectations. It's not like I was a huge fan of the game and wanted it to be this way or something of that nature. So yeah, man, it won me over. Just circle back to that. It won me over after really not digging in at first.
I think it's going to do fairly well because, when you think about it, looking back, the slashers that we watched in the 80s and 90s that we really liked weren't necessarily the deepest of characters either. So I feel like there's going to be a younger generation that's going to really enjoy and latch onto this movie because they don't they have those movies too where they just don't care that much about that stuff. So
yeah, and even one that they just announced that they're remaking today, Urban Legend. As much as I love that movie, dude, it's not like any of those characters were super duper deep, man. I guess I like the lead girl in it. She had a nice little story arc going on, but yeah, that's obviously getting on a tangent. So.
It's funny. That's a whole different discussion because I don't even think urban legends are what they used to be when that movie came out. there's not that many urban. It's more now creepypastas and shit.
That was exactly just beat me to it. That's kind of taken the place, at least in the zeitgeist, so to speak.
I don't think the kids would know the urban legends that they're referring back to if they did the same sort of urban legends that they did in the first round of movies.
Yeah, Bloody Mary and Pop Rocks and that Pop Rocks kill. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, a completely separate discussion. But yeah, guys, I say that this is worth going to see. I actually say it's worth going to see opening weekend to try and get that big crowd experience, like a lot of other movies this year have been worth doing.
Yeah. If only for the gore, man. I mean, because it does satisfy in that regard. So yeah, I mean, I know that's terrible.
You know
that's
what?
A popsicle stick, dude.
You said it and moved right past it, which made it a lot funnier. Good job. Well delivered.
Thank you. But yeah, man, I mean, don't go in expecting Shakespearean theater. Something along the lines of the last 2 films that I saw in theaters, which I finally got caught up on, Sinners, and then I watched The Ugly Stepsister, and those are like
fucking how good was Sinners?
Earth-shatteringly good, man. But this was like for just a fun time, fun just slasher gore. Sort of, man. I mean, I would recommend it. I wasn't initially expecting that, so.
Yeah. Right on, guys. Well, there you go. I think that's going to do it for our thoughts on Until Dawn. Take it for what you will. Sometimes we're a little bit easier on movies than other people, but sometimes I don't think every movie has to be everything all the time. I think some movies are fine being what they are. This is the speed of horror movies, you know what I mean? and that's fine. That's fine every now and again. So I say it's worth your time. Go and check it out. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. I'm going to be starting a series here soon on the channel that I have been developing, and something I wanted to mention with Fuego here before we go, because he is doing a screenwriting class right now. I'm going to be starting a Write With Me series on the channel that I'm going to be doing like bi-weekly, where I want to write a script with the audience. We're going to the first episode, we're going to be brainstorming and coming up with an idea together, and then I want us to outline it together, and I want to actually write the script. And if I want the audience interaction, and if I use dialogue that you give, if I use an idea that you give, I'm going to add you to the list of contributors to the script at the end of everything. So I think it's a fun idea, and I haven't seen anyone do anything like that, so I'm going to push forward with it. So Robert and I are in the process of fixing this wall right here, because we're going to sort of set it up like the, what is the girl, lo-fi girl, but it's going to be kind of a horror-fi boy kind of thing. So so look forward to that. Completely sidestep, but I wanted to let everyone know that's made it this far. They might be interested to know that. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, you guys. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias, Jaime Fuego.
And remember, stay
scared. Yeah, this way.